In Paul's letter to the Galatians, there are some wonderful and very significant verses, and one of them is Galatians 3:28, where Paul writes, "There is no longer Jew or Greek, there is no longer slave or free, there is no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus." All of you are one in Christ Jesus. What an incredible statement to make. Don't lose the power of what Paul is saying here almost 2,000 years ago, that in Christ, the ways that human beings tend to divide themselves, the ways that human beings tend to differentiate themselves, and often in order to put themselves up and over another person, Paul says all of these things are not important. And what are the distinctions that he mentions? Jew or Greek refers to people to their ethnic background, right? And even implied their religious background. And Paul is saying in Christ, there is no longer Jew or Greek. Then he mentions slave or free, which is a socioeconomic distinction between enslaved persons who have no freedom and those who have the freedom to go where they choose and to do what they want. And freedom, as we will see, is a very important theme in Paul's letter to the Galatians about how we are not bound by the law, that we are free in Christ. And so there's no longer Jew or Greek. Ethnic divisions, differences don't matter. Slave or free, socioeconomic divisions and differences don't matter. And even male and female. That, again, in a very patriarchal culture where women did not have nearly the same rights as men, and socially didn't have the same rights as men, Paul is saying in Christ, in the church, these distinctions don't matter because you are all one in Christ. Christ died for all. He was raised for all. He teaches all of us how to live as his disciples and part of God's family. In the divisive time in which we live, how important is Galatians 3:28? Think of how divided Christians are, not only among different denominations, but around some of the very categories that Paul mentions, the roles of men and women, how people of different socioeconomic background are viewed, and even how people look at others who are of a different race or nationality, ethnicity. And Paul says all those things aren't supposed to matter if you are in Christ. And that's why, as he does in so many of his letters, he's trying to help us to look beyond what differentiates us or makes us different from someone else to what we have in common in Christ, a message I think we all need.